sit right here. Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, just like church. Nobody wants, don't sit in the front, yeah. It's all good. Okay, so we will go ahead and get started. My name is Taylor Morgan. I work with Count My Vote. This is David May and Jake Housel helping out. Jake's on the video and David's helping out, so glad to be here tonight. Sorry it is late on a Friday night. Where are you guys from? I'm from Salt Lake, Draper. So, Jake, you're in Harriman?
I'm in Harriman.
Yeah, and David's in Salt Lake?
Where? Snow Creek area, but in Salt Lake.
So is this our fourth hearing today?
Yes.
So we started in Logan at 10 and then did Whitmore Library and Common Heights at 2, and then we did Orem at 4, and we're here. So got here as soon as we could. So
Now the purpose of this is what?
So it's a public information hearing on the content of our initiative language. And so also, so how this will work is we have a short slide deck here that will walk through kind of the mechanics of the new initiative language. And as we go through that, if you have any questions about those, technical aspects or the details of the language, certainly happy to answer any questions you have during that process. And then when that's done, we then open it up to all of you for public comment, which we've been doing at all of our hearings. And obviously we have a camera, and that's because we're required by statute to film the hearings and then provide that footage to Lieutenant Governor to post online for the public.
Does the public comment, though, it won't change your initiative?
Actually, we've been working on some tweaks on the initiative language based on public feedback. We actually can, per Utah law, we can finalize our language, but we don't have to finalize it until after the hearings. So we have kind of been working on a few
But the
tweaks.
hearing is just a formality, because you can still just go ahead with whatever you want to, right?
Yeah. We're required to hold the hearings. before we
It's
can
just a
get
requirement.
signatures.
It's not really, we want this feedback because we're going to take it and we're really going to go back and refine and change things. It's more so we're required by law to do this, so we go through the process.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we certainly try to have a positive attitude about it, not to say that your feedback doesn't matter to us, right? We genuinely have added some changes and we're open to more genuine.
So on today, what's the percentage been pro con?
Yeah, it's kind of been pretty split. I'd say depending on the location.
I mean, Logan was all against it.
Yeah.
What about Orem and the other?
Orem was, I'd say, a little more split. Whitmore was largely very supportive. So.
And like at those meetings, how many people were
Oh, boy, Whitmore, we probably had, what, 50 people? Orem, we probably had 20, 25. We had about 15 in Logan.
Are you guys compensated by Count My Vote
there? Well,
initiative?
they're paid.
Yeah, we're paid for doing this, yeah. Yep. Okay, so we'll get started, we'll go through this. Again, we'll do the slide deck, and then at the end of the slide deck, we'll then open it up to all of you to make a public comment on the record. We've been giving people at other locations, a couple minutes, but we'll have, we'll give you 3 minutes since there's, fewer people here if you want.
How long
to.
is your slide presentation?
It just depends. We've been going through that about 10, 15 minutes or shorter. It's only 12 slides. So, yeah. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So background of Count My Vote, we're nonpartisan, nonprofit, broad-based effort, and our goal is to improve participation in Utah elections. That's what we are about. You may be familiar with our 2013 initiative. The 2013 initiative led, very similar actually to this new initiative content in the direct primary election process. A few major differences we'll go over. But that initiative led to SB 54, a compromise with the legislature. And we had gathered about 105,000 signatures statewide, and then got to a point with the legislature that we worked out a deal, the compromise of SB 54, which is the dual track access to the ballot through caucus convention and through signatures, the signature path. And so SB 54, I personally really like SB 54, my personal opinion. I've been a delegate. I really think there's a lot of positive things about the caucus convention system, so I really like SB 54. I think it's a good option Unfortunately, it's been under constant attack every year, lawsuits from the party, appeals from the party, and then every year legislative attacks, and then other political attacks by the parties and county parties. And so Count My Vote came to a point where the decision was made that we need to put this before the voters. We need to let Utah voters have the final say on this. And so that's where we are now with the new initiative. So direct primary elections, the reason why our language seeks a direct primary election is because direct primary elections facilitate greater participation. They improve candidates' access to the primary election ballot. They preserve the power of the political party members to select their nominees. We'll go all over these in more detail. They give all party voters a voice. They reduce the potential for fraud and election irregularities, and they remove systematic obstacles to participation. So this diagram shows how under this language, how the direct primary election process would work. So the caucus convention system, we don't touch that, we don't eliminate or prohibit that. The party's a private organization, and the party should always be free to hold its caucus and conventions for important purposes, endorsing a party candidate that's on the ballot, perhaps recruiting candidates, assisting candidates with signatures, approving a platform, all those important functions
Taylor,
are available.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Since we're a small group like this.
Sure.
You said the party's a private organization?
Yes.
Really? So the party can determine who their nominees are?
I'm not going to take debate on that, but
No,
yes.
I'm just saying.
They're a
if
private organization.
Can they determine who their representatives?
Yes and no.
So they're not a private
We
organization?
both know the answer is no. The court has upheld the primary election process for party nomination. And so, but as a private organization, the party is free to hold its caucuses and conventions. And that's not something this language would eliminate or prohibit. And that process could still play an important role in the nomination process. So the way a candidate gets on the ballot would be through nominating signatures of their fellow party voters. The threshold is 1%. A candidate qualifies for the primary election ballot by collecting signatures from at least 1% of the party voters in the jurisdiction that they're seeking to represent. And so that 1% threshold is significantly lower than the current thresholds. Right? The current thresholds are roughly about 8 or 9%, which would be unconstitutional if it weren't for the alternate path through the caucus and convention system. Our surrounding states all have direct primary elections. They have signature thresholds that range anywhere from 1 to 5%. And so the 1%, the reasoning behind that number is the idea is to establish a seriousness test for candidates, to have candidates demonstrate a sufficient level of support among party voters, but to not create a barrier to accessing the ballot that's too high, so that any candidate can get on the ballot. So once a candidate qualifies for the ballot by getting those signatures, and again, this, I guess a couple important points too that we'll reinforce again in a minute, but we don't deal with unaffiliated voters. Unaffiliated voters cannot sign to nominate a party candidate, and also a voter can sign more than one candidate's petition for any given race. That's different under the law right now. Voters can only sign one candidate's petition, and also under, judge, in the law, under SB 54 originally, unaffiliated voters could sign party candidates' petitions, but Judge Newfer struck that from SB 54, and so we have kept with that, in that unaffiliated voters cannot sign to nominate a party candidate.
But like a constitutional party member, American party member, they only have to get like 10 signatures.
Yeah, the 1% threshold is
Republican may
equal
have
across
to
all
get
parties.
2,000, but the Constitution may only have to get like 10.
Yeah, it's just a flat 1% of the registered party voters in that jurisdiction. Yeah. So then the 1% signatures qualifies a candidate for the primary ballot. And then, this is another important piece in the new language. We have included language to deal with potential plurality on the primary ballot. So that if any one candidate on the primary election ballot does not, if no one wins 35% or more of the vote, the top two vote getters in the primary advance to a runoff by mail election, and then whichever candidate wins a majority, in that by-mail runoff becomes the party's nominee and is on the general election ballot as the party candidate.
And then who would pay for that runoff election?
The state would. That's our fiscal estimate that we'll get to. It's our second to
So it
last
may
slide.
cost us more money than the president's.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so just going over a few key points again, this language would implement a direct primary election, not an open or a blanket primary election. So direct primary election means the primaries still happen within the parties, and the nominees are chosen by those party voters. It doesn't touch the party's ability to hold an open or a closed primary. That's still completely the party's decision. And we only impact partisan primary elections. So municipal elections and others that aren't partisan, this process doesn't affect that. We've gone over a few of these already. We already hit the affiliation piece.
What about special elections if someone leaves office?
Yeah, so we don't actually change that process in this language. We haven't.
So it's still a
Address
party
that.
in 30 days? all
Yeah,
that.
that's how it is right now. Yeah, it's up to the party to essentially
Doesn't
recommend
change what
to the
currently
governor.
state statute.
No, we haven't, and that's one of the pieces we're kind of we're taking feedback on, is are there issues, are we creating problems? Probably our original approach was just not to touch that vacancy issue, but you know we're looking at that to see if there's a better way to do it. But I think the idea is that the successor candidate in a vacancy should be the same party as the predecessor, and I think right now, is it the party provides the governor with one name, or is it 3 names?
Depends on the race.
Because we changed that a few years ago, I
It's
don't
one
remember.
name.
One name, okay,
And it depends on what level of office that is, where it goes.
okay. And is that decision made, is it made at the delegate level, or is it made, okay, all right. And so statewide then, is there a convention, or is it at the SEC to make that decision?
It depends on what level of office it is.
Depends on us, okay. Yeah, yeah, so I don't know, I think the way we have it now seems to work, so I don't know that we need to touch that, but there have been some folks recommend that we do different things, and we just haven't included it yet. So, okay, so again, the threshold goes to, it's even for all political parties, that 1%. I hit on the voters are able to nominate more than one candidate running. And then here I have some additional sample numbers, but here are some statewide samples. For example, a Republican candidate running for statewide office or for the U.S. Senate would need to gather 6,514 signatures. A Democratic Party candidate also running statewide or U.S. Senate would need to collect 1,596 signatures. So here are more sample numbers here. Congressional district, an example for a Republican running in the 4th. Sam Pete's in the 4th, yeah.
We're second.
Oh, are you? Where's the cutoff?
Just north of East. So from 8 from south is
Got it.
second.
Okay. Okay. So in the 4th at least, 144,000 registered Republicans. Signature requirement is 1,438 for a Democrat, 464. And then, similar numbers for Utah County. For a countywide seat, for example, a Republican would need to gather 1,437. And then a Democrat would need to gather 152.
On those signatures,
Yeah.
can they come from any place? In other words, say this is statewide, and they just go up to Salt Lake and get all their votes, all their signatures.
Yeah,
Or
there's
do
no-
They have to represent the area they're covering.
Yeah, just
percentage from
just
certain
under how it
places.
is right now, under the 28,000 right now, there's no geographical distribution requirement for that, and nor is there for these.
So realistically, a person could just get all the votes in Salt Lake County and forget about the rest of the state.
They could if that was the way they wanted to run their campaign.
Well, almost likely they would.
Well, just like if you're,
It's cheaper, it's right there.
If you're paying together signatures, you're going to gather them as easily as possible.
Yeah, the easiest.
yeah, and that's kind of, the idea here too is that, these signature numbers are such that, if you're a serious candidate running for statewide office, I think it's totally plausible that you and your campaign could go gather those 6,500 signatures without having to hire anyone. I think that's very
And
much
still, you're
possible.
going to gather them in.
You're gonna gather them right there in Salt Lake.
Yeah,
Salt Lake County, you find-
I think that's true, but even under the caucus system, there's no geographic distribution requirement in the delegate count. You just have to win 60% of the 4,000. You could get 70% just along the Wasatch Front.
Geographic area.
No, I'm just saying, it's, you know,
Your delegates, you know,
The delegate distribution.
distribution is represented by county, so.
sure, but,
And people actually come down here, they won't after this.
oh, I don't know, I think that if they're a good candidate, they will. But,
Why?
yeah,
Why
Why
would
would
they?
they?
I mean,
why
it's
wouldn't
common
they?
sense.
Why wouldn't they?
They don't,
Because
because
they
they
don't
don't need our votes.
It's a lot cheaper to get.
Just
the
cheaper
votes
to
on the
buy the
front.
vote and get all the signatures up there in Salt Lake.
Well, I don't know, we can prognosticate about it, but I don't know, I really don't. So, I think it's a fair concern though, I will, you know, think it is a fair concern, so, I don't wanna dismiss it. Let's see, any questions on these numbers at all? Does that make, it seems to, obviously, there's a gap in the total of both party voters and the registered voters, that's because unaffiliated voters aren't listed there. So that's the reason for the discrepancy in the numbers. Let's see. Okay, again, Caucus convention system is still very much in play, just not as an official path to the ballot. And, here's our fiscal impact statement. So, under our fiscal impact statement, the key is that potentially our initial language could result in a runoff election in every race, every primary statewide, right? That's possible. So the Governor's Office of Management and Budget said that in that circumstance, in that scenario, the election could cost up to $2.9 million additionally every 2 years, 3.35. But the 2.9, the big piece of that is the cost that the state has estimated, what it costs them to administer any election cycle.
Is that based on a statewide race? Or, for example, say Sanpete County, we have our commissioner's race, and we have to do the runoff after that. Does the county foot that bill, or is the state?
This includes all the counties and the state office. This estimate includes if there had to be a runoff election in every race statewide.
But I mean, if you're mandating it on a state level, who's gonna pay for it? I mean, if these small rural counties can fit the bill,
No, it would be funded by the legislature
is that?
through the Lieutenant Governor's Elections Office through, they would fund that $3.35 million potentially every 2 years for that runoff cycle.
So there's the potential.
Yeah, I mean, the county, yeah, the county, you know, I mean, the state definitely gives the county money, but it still costs the counties to run elections.
Right, and the counties helped prepare this estimate, right? They weighed in on this and provided their estimates of what it would cost them. So that's, the county cost is part of this. Statewide, the statewide cycle cost is $2.9 million, that's including everything, all the county costs. I mean, counties do the bulk, right, of election administration. Really, the Lieutenant Governor's office is, you know, they handle things at a multi-county, multi-district level, but it's the county clerks that bear all, you know, most of the burden of elections. So the $3.35 million up to $3.35 million every 2 years. Keep a couple other pieces of that are the additional primary election, 40,000, additional signature verification at 50,000, and then $30,000 in one-time funds for posting information.
So the 3.35 just covers the basic election.
That is an entire, that is up to that cost if there was a runoff in every race statewide. If there was a runoff, that's what it could cost up to that.
What about the additional cost of verifying signatures?
That's right there. That's that $50,000.
So the runoff election, they figured would be about 2.9 million?
Yeah, because that's, the 2.9 again is what they estimate, that's what their cost is for any election cycle. And what we have done, our language has potentially injected an entirely new election cycle into the existing election cycle because of that runoff cycle. And so for them, they have to estimate and say, well, if there was a runoff in every race, it could cost us as much as that 2.9 million. Now, of course, they say candidate and voter behavior may change these estimates. So, but again, they have to prepare funding-wise for that amount because theoretically, in our language, that is theoretically and legally possible.
You see, part of the argument last time is that the state paid for the primary election so thus they could control how the candidates were actually picked or put in there. So this go around now it's going to cost us more by actually And it will cost us more.
Yeah, oh,
No
yeah.
matter what, it will cost us more because you're gonna have school
Right.
costs.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
statistically a guarantee.
Yeah.
So the new Count My Vote initiative will cost the voters more in election cycles.
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. Yeah, that's accurate. Exactly how much, we don't know, but
Yeah,
up
to $3
to,
million.
yeah, up to $3 million every 2 years potentially in, that runoff election cycle, so that is possible, yeah. So that's, this is just copied and pasted from that, the statement issued by GOMB. But that's available, it's available on Count My Vote homepage, and also available at elections.utah.gov. So that statement is there for review. And let's see, so that's really,
Ballot initiative doesn't require fiscal language in the ballot
it
initiative.
does actually now. Actually, at the bottom of every single signature page. It's at the, it used to be just at the front with the language, but the legislature changed that, so now it's actually, that fiscal estimate will be printed at the bottom of every signature page in your packet. Yeah.
How big a print? Same size.
I don't know.
What about when it's on the ballot?
I imagine, I don't know for sure, I assume it would have to be there. We don't,
I don't know.
Legislative Research and General Counsel, they're the ones who actually write the name of the initiative as it will appear on the ballot. And they also write the official description of the ballot initiative. So I suspect they would also attach that fiscal note somehow. I don't know exactly what that looks like on the ballot though. I know it's gonna be a very long one on the ballot though, with all these initiatives, so, yeah. Well, so that's really the mechanics of the process. Went through it pretty quickly. Happy to answer any technical questions you have that we didn't get to. That's my email address there. Of course, there's more information in the full text of our languages available on the website, at countmyvoteutah.org. It's also available on the Lieutenant Governor's website, elections.utah.gov. This is an important point to note. In 2013, we were registered, our PIC, our Political Issues Committee, which you register for disclosure purposes with the LG's office. We were then Alliance for Good Governance, but we've since closed that PIC, and our new PIC for this initiative is it's Count My Vote. We have a new nonprofit, Count My Vote Inc., and so we also have a new Political Issues Committee that's registered. We filed a report already, and so our disclosures are all available at disclosures.utah.gov under the Count My Vote PIC, just so there's no confusion there.
So will LeVar Webb still do a lot of voting? I know he's paid about $1.6 million last go around.
LeVar is still involved on our committee, but he's pretty busy.
I mean, again,
Yeah.
it wasn't, anything was, it was all legal, but
I
I look at the
yeah.
ethics of it a little bit, say he's part of this group, he's pushing in the paper, and he got paid like $1.6 million.
I think that, so the way it worked last time is.
And that's there in print.
I was actually an employee of the Exoro Group,
Mhm.
as was my co-executive director, Lindsay. And Exoro Group was like the
Yeah, that's
consultant for the project. And so actually all, Exoro Group was paid essentially all the money, then Exoro Group handled all the contracts for everything, from signatures to me, to
It still
everything.
broke down on some of the financial reports that showed for signature gathering. There's other groups that were paid to, other marketing groups too.
Yeah.
Not just
Yeah.
Exor, I mean, there was a lot.
Yeah.
They were like 1.6 and there was still over $1 million paid to other groups.
Yeah, I wish I would have saw more
You
of
know,
that.
and yet you bring it up, because I still think it's on the state website. Could you actually-
Yeah, it's all there. It's all there still. The PIC account is closed, but the reports are all still available.
Right.
Yeah, so those are all there. Yeah.
So the question I have is, supposedly the objective was to encourage more participation, to open it up more venues for people to participate. And so the objective of doing away with the caucus system is what? If that's the objective of this whole initiative.
Yeah, again, personally, I really like SB 54. I think it's a really good, I like having those dual path options. But again, from our perspective, the challenge is that every year it faces legislative threats, repeated legal threats and lawsuits and so forth.
So why
And
not,
so-
why not put that language as your initiative? If that's your goal,
Yeah.
well,
Why isn't that your initiative?
Why not run your version of SB
54
54
as
as
the
your
initiative?
initiative? I mean, it seems kind of counterintuitive.
That actually is possible. I mean,
You see, when
we're
you
talking
first
about it,
started,
looking at it.
the first time you started
We're
your,
already in this.
the Count My Vote, the first time it had the dual path.
No, it didn't.
It did it one time.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yes, it
you're
did.
talking about way, way back.
Exactly.
You're
it
right,
did.
yeah, it did.
And then
Yeah.
you switched it partway through.
That's right, yeah.
So,
Well,
so I'm just
yeah.
saying, and then the legislature came up with this other thing too, so.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is interesting. Now, with
Yeah.
regards to the court thing, if the courts should come and say this is unconstitutional, SB 54,
Yeah,
even if you pass your initiative, it's still unconstitutional.
no, that's
Yes,
not
it is. If
correct.
it's unconstitutional to the United States Constitution. And that was part of the reason why they wanted them to drop that with the threat, we're gonna do this, because if that was to be upheld, that it's unconstitutional, your initiative is unconstitutional.
No, it's a
Explain why
different,
it
if
isn't.
the language is different, it's a different process.
No, but if they come back and say political parties are private institutions and are able to decide to vet how they actually pick their candidates. If they say that is a constitutional right of the parties, your initiative would be unconstitutional. No, it would, I'm just saying.
Well, I would disagree with you on that, but I'm not an attorney, so
Well, not a question of attorney, it's a question of the judge or just common sense. If they say.
Yeah,
if the
but
court says-
every state, all of our neighbor states have direct primary elections. We're the only state left in the country that has a vestige of this caucus nomination process left. I
Well, I'm just saying if
don't
the court
see a
came out and
federal
said
judge
that.
striking down direct primary elections as unconstitutional. Now, the unaffiliated piece, that made sense to me, right? You can't force that association. That's clearly unconstitutional. But the question revolves around, right, the ballot and party insignia on the ballot, and that's something that I don't understand all the details there. So, but again, the lawsuit, what happens in Denver is, we're moving forward with the initiative. That's not, we're not running this just as a consequence of that. We're also running it because of the legislation and, constant legislative attacks, legislative threats. So again, really what this comes down to is we think the voters should decide how they want to choose. But
We do
put the
like
question before the
SB
voters.
54. We like the compromise. We're not going that direction with this.
Well, this is putting the question of direct primary elections before the voters. And if the voters prefer the current system and don't want this, they have that choice on the ballot.
Well, I mean, I get,
You know?
to me, it comes down to your initiative loses, its mission if all of a sudden now its mission is to limit participation.
I don't think this limits participation. I think this
Well, you certainly have
increases
one
participation.
an avenue for participation.
Well,
We get 400
yeah,
delegates
but
out
at
to
the
meet.
same time, we're talking about the signature thresholds right now under SB 54 are so prohibitively high that they would be unconstitutional if it weren't for the caucus convention. And so by lowering those thresholds to that 1%, we're increasing access to the ballot, which means more candidates will be able to get on the ballot, voters will have more options at the
I
ballot,
think you will get more
and you'll have
candidates on the
more
ballot,
candidates
but I think
engaging with more voters. We think that'll lead to higher participation.
I think you'll get more candidates on the ballot, but I think they'll be from a smaller geographic area.
Well, every district, every county race will use that direct primary process.
Right, but.
You're talking about statewide?
race.
Yeah.
Maybe. But at the end of the day, that ballot will be open with that 1% threshold to anyone who can be nominated by the
If you're
fellow party
looking for
voters.
voter participation, mail voting is it. We've increased voter participation.
Yeah.
Great.
And we think this will increase it further, and it'll just give candidates more, voters more options.
Well, in a lot of the studies though, is the voter participation wasn't so much what we're dealing with here, it's the dominance of one party. Like Hawaii, they have horrible voter participation too, but they're a Democrat party.
Sure.
Utah,
Yeah,
parties,
that could be
'cause
part of it,
that-
yeah.
So a lot of the premise that was presented to us why we have poor voter participation is really because of the dominance of one party, not because of all these other issues. Not as much, it really isn't.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I would say too that when all party voters in that dominant party are able to choose their candidates, then that also leads to higher participation, right? So,
All are given the opportunity, that's what we take it.
well, sure.
But the question is, what about, when the founding fathers set up our country, they set up a Senate and a House. And they did that for a couple of reasons, large states, small states, so that all people were represented. Basically, what you're doing here is pushing it all to the Senate. In other words, the large counties will be represented, the rest of us will be forgotten.
I don't see how that
And
analogy
it's,
works
no,
at
it's
all.
exactly, it's the same argument, because see, you can say, well, yeah, but you have less votes. Well, so did those small states. But because of the House and the way it was structured, it allowed them to have their voice, along with the Senate. The Senate had the representation for each one. And so they're basically, right now with our system, they come and visit us. They won't.
Sure, but they don't have to visit you now. They
Yeah,
can-
exactly.
They
They
can
don't
get,
have to
I mean,
visit
you said it.
You can get it right.
No, they don't have to, they
visit
didn't
us
have to
now.
visit you before in the caucus system.
Uh,
They can get all the delegates they need on the Wasatch Front.
Not really. 'Cause
Why isn't there a proportional distribution requirement under the old caucus system? Why weren't candidates required to get X number of delegates in each county?
Because to get a certain percentage, they needed to reach
No,
out.
they didn't. 70% of the 4,000 delegates in the Republican Party live on the Wasatch Front. So there was
They
no
still don't-
geographic.
No, there is still a reason why, because they have to almost get 100% of those.
Okay.
And they're
I'm
not gonna
just saying,
geographically,
it's-
they're not gonna get 100%.
There was no geographic distribution requirement there. There is none here. So I disagree
No,
with the
there's
argument.
a difference.
So, okay, well, fair enough. We'll open it up now to public comment. You'll have 3 minutes each to comment on the record. Again, we have the camera here, operated by Jake. Jake was former vice president of the student body here at Snow College, so he's in charge. David, we have a timer.
Right now.
And if you'd like to stand where you are, that's great. We can get you, or if you want to come up front, whatever you'd like to do. So whoever wants to start with 3 minutes, and we'll get it. And then we give the video to the lieutenant governor to post on the elections website for public record. So if you, when you started, wouldn't mind stating your name and where you're from for the record. That's okay. Whoever would like to go first.
3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Anybody want to go, or?
I think they said two just then.
You can
We
have
have
3
3 minutes, we
Yeah.
have such a small group.
Yeah. If you like it, you don't have to go for 3.
Yeah, no one's required to do it either, so.
You can have my 3 minutes.
Oh,
Now you guys sit
You're yielding the time.
How many minutes do you want?
none,
Because it's not gonna make any difference.
no, it won't.
I mean, this is something you have to do, we realize that, but. The interesting thing about it is that the polls are about 50-50 now.
Yeah.
Versus they were 60-40, so.
Yeah.
I think there's a real push, especially, the other thing too is you have to get a certain percentage out of like the state senate districts, right? Votes.
For the initiative? Yeah, we have to get, it's 10% of votes cast for president in the last cycle, and it's 26 of 29 state senate districts.
State senate district.
Yeah.
So, you see, like ours takes up a lot of the rural Utah, so. When do they start gathering, when can they start gathering their signatures?
We can start once we've completed the hearings and submitted the video footage. Again, we're looking at some changes and tweaks here and there in the language. So we would resubmit that, and then provided that language doesn't impact the fiscal estimate at all, we can then immediately start gathering signatures.
You have to have to gather by,
April 15th of 2018, yeah.
and you have to get how many?
About 114,000, say about
What do you anticipate dollar-wise being put into the initiative?
Oh, that's a good question.
I know it's pretty unlimited on this side of it.
I would say, I mean, we're starting late, and gathering signatures isn't easy in the winter. I'm not sure, I would say anywhere from, 500,000 or maybe, a little more, maybe up to $1 million isn't much for
But
gathering
not counting the
signatures.
advertising,
What now?
but not counting the advertising going into passing the initiative once it's on.
Yeah, but that really wouldn't take place until after we qualify for the ballot, right? And so, at that point, I really don't know. It's gonna be a tough cycle, it's a midterm, there's 4 other initiatives potentially on the ballot.
Right.
So I
Well,
don't,
some strategy, I mean, I know you don't get to pick what other initiatives are on, but some of them are fairly controversial.
yeah, trust me, I've had,
Raising taxes for schools.
yeah, yep. I absolutely 100% agree. So it is what it is, but, yeah.
3 out of 4 passed on the last ballot, is that right? 3 out of 4 of the initiatives on the last ballot passed?
These initiatives don't work.
They're much different.
Those were, I think, were maybe bonds or something?
Well, there was
Constitutional
three that were.
amendments, maybe.
Some were just changing the
constitutional.
wording about how the lieutenant governor, wasn't that on this last one? too?
It was, and then the oath of office.
Yeah.
was.
that
I mean,
was
there
just-
were,
it was just
constitutional
little
amendments.
pencil stuff, it wasn't.
well, there were some that really should have passed and did. One that shouldn't have did.
Well, if we, I mean, if you want to make a comment on the public record, we'll get it and film it, that's great. If not, we'll end the hearing formally, and we're happy to chat and hang out as we clean up. I mean, it's up to you guys. Want to give you that opportunity if you want to take it.
I don't need to comment.
Yeah, I mean, our comment is we think that political parties are private institutions, like you said, and they should determine who represents them. Because somebody could sign up and really never, they could be a total opposite member, go in, change their thing, go get the signatures, be the candidate. You could have, in high theory, if they have enough money, you could have a Democrat representing the Republican Party.
If Republicans nominated and voted for them, sure.
Not nominated them if they gathered the signatures.
One person.
From party
1% of the
voters.
signatures.
From party voters.
They got
Party
on.
voters who are
Sure.
nominating them.
Right.
Right? It's all party voters. It all happens
So I guess
within party voters.
if I had a comment, it would be,
Yeah.
if you do like the dual path,
Yeah.
Have that your initiative.
run your initiative as dual path, not.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Noted. Yeah. Sincerely. Appreciate that. Okay.
Certainly, we don't care.
But yeah, I mean,
Go home
thanks.
so we can go home.
but
We're
the
good?
question is.
All right. Thank you for coming. This ends the formal hearing. Cut the video.
You guys all live in